So anyway, welcome here at our second edition of the Front End Forward meetups. This one will be on fonts and SVGs. You're here at the Voorhoede. We're a front-end development agency of about 20 developers to project managers. I'm one of the front-end developers / half project management. My name is Jasper. And so for tonight, we have two front-end speakers for you. But I want to say a bit about our company. We do just front-end. We focus on mainly everything that happens in the browser. Sometimes we pick a bit of the server on top of that because often when we feel like we can't achieve everything that we want in the browser because backend developers are not doing what we want, like the server. Things that you might know us from is funda.nl. That's the most public thing I think we've done the front end for. We also do it for other fancy projects like for crane operators in the port of Rotterdam, and we've made something for luggage drop-off systems, and then it's just part of the terminal where all the sensors are connected to. As long as there's a browser in something, and we can do with browser technology, then that's basically what we try to do here. And we like to share what we do in our office. So for tonight, the two speakers, kind of like in the Heroes TV show, the one of us, one of them. We have that here as well. We have one of us, that's Jurgen for tonight, and one of them, the other one, is who was kind enough to come here and speak to us. I had a few formality things for tonight. That was the BLT. So the B stands for beer. Beer is in the fridge. The L is live stream, so we're live streaming this. So if you walk off here, you're out of screen, and behind your laptop, you're out of screen. You're wearing a headset, the public isn't, so when people ask questions, if you want to repeat them, then the people following it also know that. People that are in the live stream, there's a chat on the side, and then if you type in there, then someone here has a laptop, and they can repeat your questions for you. So that's the L. T toilets are in the middle over there, and the light is out on the women's bathroom. So if you don't want to use your phone as the light, you can also use the men's room. So gentlemen, be kind and make sure that they can also use that one. So that was the T. So I think those were the formalities. Then I would like to introduce our first speaker of tonight, which is Roel Lieskens, aka Pixel Ambacht on Twitter, who is a front-end developer at Cabisa in Weert. That's all the way down in Limburg, so he had to come to rush hour traffic to get here. So I'm extra grateful that he's here. I follow Roel on Twitter, and because he's my favorite source when it comes to everything web fonts related. I know that he experiments with it quite a bit, things like color fonts, variable fonts, and he recently, or a bit recently, published an article on fixing Font Awesome and all the optimization tricks that you could do in order to make it more performant. And that was actually the moment that I thought, we need to have him here and talk about that. So we invited him, and now he's here. So I would like you to give it up for Roel.
Should we stop this thing?
Mm-hmm.
My ears?
Preferably.
The other way around, I suppose.
And if you could then just repeat what's on your slide.
Is this thing on? Do we get an answer to that? So if I said here, I'm not in view, in camera. Okay, this will be my position for tonight. Before we get started, I would like to do a little quiz. Move that cursor out of the way. Who here is old enough to know what this is or has done this? Yeah, did you actually write this code? Did you use it?
Yeah.
All right. Yes, this was scrolling text, the marquee tag. Does anybody know what this piece of code does? And did you use it in production?
Yeah, definitely.
This, of course, was table-based layouts. The way we used to do our layouts before we had proper CSS and knew about diffs and floats and everything, way before Flexbox. Who knows this? Okay. Yes, this is, of course, another ancient piece of web code. The bulletproof font face. And I put this in a list of old deprecated stuff that you probably shouldn't use anymore because there's better options. And today I would like to show you some of those options. But this is a very broad subject, using web fonts on the internet. There's a lot of details that you have to get right, or there's a lot of different ways you can approach this. So I'm not going to go in depth on everything, but I will try to focus on a little thing that you don't usually see in the blog posts about the subject, and that is how to optimize the assets, the fonts themselves. My name is Luniscus. On the web, I do stuff on Pixel Ambacht. And this is a talk about web font performance. I think there's three key issues to doing web fonts properly. You have to have the right mindset. You have to know what you're doing and make conscious decisions about whether you were leaving out some optimizations or whether you choose for some to serve fonts to some people and not to others. The second thing that's important is writing the proper code, of course. I'm going to dive into that as well. This is the flash of invisible text. There we are. And the third one that I would like to talk about is having proper assets. Those are the actual binary files that you will offer to your visitors. So the first thing, having the right mindset. I think there is a web font etiquette that you should adopt as a developer, and it consists of three parts. The first is the idea to only offer web fonts to capable modern browsers, browsers that can properly handle new formats like WAF and WAF2. And you offer system fonts or fallback fonts to all other browsers. If you draw that line in the sand and you have your modern browsers here and all the other browsers there, it makes everything a lot simpler. And once you realize that a browser that can handle modern web fonts can also end up on the other side of the line when there's a slow internet connection, for instance, and the web fonts don't load, you can be sure with this approach that you offer a good experience to both sides of the line in the sand. The third point in the web font etiquette, I think, is you have to apply the fonts as user-friendly and as efficient as possible. Meaning that you can do whatever you want, but I think you shouldn't offer to just write a bulletproof font face, stick it in your CSS, and then just think you have taken care of everything, because there's a lot of problems with web fonts, especially when they don't load. Offering web fonts to capable and modern browsers when translated to code, I think you've come across this, or maybe you are familiar with this. There are two formats, WAF and WAF2. They aren't actually formats. They are basically sort of zipped versions of OpenType fonts, TrueType fonts, and OpenType fonts. So it's not a format in itself. It's just a regular old font that you use in your Microsoft Word or whatever. But they're compressed. But we call it a format. So these are very well compressed. They are like 30% of the original file size. And so that's quite an optimization. For the rest of the browsers, you can choose to either say, I'll make my design as solid and as agile as possible, and it doesn't really matter which other font has been loaded. And you can just say, my web font is a sans serif font, and if it hasn't been downloaded for whatever reason, just go to any old sans serif font. But you can also say, this list doesn't even fit. You can have a big list of fonts that look as closely as possible to your original font. And when my web font doesn't load, then it goes to Frutiger. If that isn't there, it goes to Frutiger Linotype, etc. And the idea is that it goes to the next font that might be on your system that looks as close as possible to your original font. Making your web page look kind of like how it was intended, but with a font that doesn't have to be downloaded. Right. The third point, applying fonts as efficient and user-friendly as possible. Those that consist of basically two things that you have to take care of. You have to have a font loading strategy, and I'll dive into that in a minute. And you have to optimize your font delivery. If you can get the font across cyberspace as fast as possible, that's good for everyone. But why use a font loading strategy? What's it for, and what does it fix? What does it do? There's a problem with web fonts. This is actually the flash of invisible text. I'm sure you've all seen this, especially when you've had a crappy internet connection or are on Twitter and see people complain about it. What happens here is these are 5 frames between when the page is requested until the page is finally drawn. And you can see here the request has been done. Here the HTML is in and the CSS is in, but the browser doesn't have the web font yet that you've stuck in your CSS. So it draws the page, but keeps the text invisible because the web font will come in later. And on the 3rd frame, the web font is still being loaded. On the 4th frame, the web font is still being loaded. And then on the 5th frame, the final frame, finally the font has arrived and the page can be drawn in the proper font. This is really frustrating because if you just drive into a tunnel or you have a really crappy internet connection in the south of the Netherlands in Limburg, then there can be a lot of those frames in between, and it can take a lot of time before your font can be finally downloaded. Chrome has recently, or a while ago, they used to keep the text invisible for a maximum of 3 seconds, and then show a fallback font. And recently, if they see that you are on a slow connection, they shorten that time and they switch to the fallback font immediately. So that frame that's at the upmost right will move a little closer to the left. This is another issue that is one of the reasons that you need a font loading strategy. The flash of unstyled text. And the acronym for that is fout, which of course in Dutch is wrong. And this is, but that's wrong because it's actually a pretty good solution. This is what Edge and Internet Explorer does. They draw the website in just the fallback font immediately, and then when the web font has been loaded at the end, it applies the web font. So you can read the content, well, basically immediately. And I think that is the best option. This doesn't, but this happens when you don't do anything. You just leave it to the browser. You just do your add font face rule, and you say to the browser, do whatever you want. Either do this or do this. I don't care. And having a font loading strategy means that you take control of what happens between when the web font has been first requested and has been finally downloaded. There are lots of options to battle this flash of invisible text and flash of unstyled text. One option from the future is a CSS property called font display, where you can say draw the page in the fallback font first, and when the web font arrives, draw it in the web font, or set a timeout in there. And a couple of other options, but this hasn't been supported very well yet. So I chose to not go too deeply into this for this talk. Another one that's coming, that's on the horizon, but that hasn't arrived yet, is the JavaScript font loading API, which is basically a promise-based system where you can ask, has this font been downloaded? If yes, then you can apply a class to your HTML or to your document, signaling your web font has finally been downloaded, so maybe redraw the page. I will give an example in a minute. You can more or less simulate these two options today by using little JavaScript libraries like Font Face Observer by Bramstein and Web Font Loader from Typekit, if I'm not mistaken. They do exactly that, and it works like this. When the page has been originally drawn, it will pick Verdana font or any other sans serif, and then the font has been will download on the background, and it takes 10 seconds. After 10 seconds, the JavaScript library will determine, okay, the font is finally in, and sticks this class, the fonts loaded class, on your document, and then you can write your CSS accordingly. You can either apply it or establish in CSS. Well, it took 5 seconds. The user is probably already reading my page. I don't want to swap fonts at this stage. But the important thing is you have control now. You don't let the browser decide. You decide what happens. Is that everything you can do? No. You could use different type of font that loads quicker. I should have put that one on the bottom, so let's ignore it for now. The thing that you can do is like load your web font asynchronously with Ajax. You can inline it in a style sheet and load that. You can exploit local storage and download the font to there, and once you have established that it's there, then apply it. You can pre-fetch the fonts or preload the font so that instead of waiting for the CSS and the document to say, okay, we have this font and it's actually being applied, so let's download it, you can force download it, so to say. And another technology from the future is variable fonts, which is a technology where you can put different widths and weights of a font in one file, meaning you only have one HTTP request, and smaller files. You can potentially get very light font and a very black font, and 8 steps in between from one font file. And there's even more little things that you can do to improve the loading of your fonts or to take control of what happens. But I also chose not to go into that because I want to talk about optimizing font delivery. And that is what actually happens on the network, what your browser sees. I need a font, tells the server on the other end of cyberspace, hey, I need a font. Would you please send it over? And what happens then is what I would like to show today. Yeah, it's basically getting fonts to the browser as soon as possible. What can you do there? First up, common sense stuff. Well, use less fonts. If you want your website to render quickly, and you have 8 fonts and they all need to be downloaded before your content can be viewed, maybe it's a good idea to snip some of those fonts, because no file is quicker downloaded than no file. You can do some basic network and server stuff, like setting the proper cache headers for your fonts so they don't get downloaded all the time. Set proper compression. In a nutshell, this means don't put gzip compression on your WAV fonts, because they're already super compressed. But do put it on TrueType fonts or SVG fonts if you use those old EOT fonts, because they actually benefit from gzip compression. And have it run. I don't do a lot of stuff on the server, but my idea was that not a lot of these settings come out of the box. So if you serve like those older formats, make sure that those get compressed and whatnot. HTTP2 is a way to bundle network requests and keep connections open and get a more efficient connection with the server. I'm probably explaining that a bit simplistic, but I am a front-end developer, so it's black box, and it reduces the request, and latency is as much as a problem as big files. So, and now this is where it gets interesting for me, because what we've talked about so far are everything about web fonts except the files themselves. That little WAV file that you have in your code base, or that WAV2 file. When you buy a font or you license a font, it might come with a lot of language support. It might support Cyrillic or Vietnamese, and you might not need all of that. All of those languages. You might have a website for I don't know, cow tipping in Limburg. You can be pretty sure that you can get the basic Latin, you can do everything you want on your site. But watch out. Especially Motley Crue fans, watch out. Subsetting is cutting out characters that you think you don't need, but there might be occasions when you actually have unforeseen circumstances. Somebody has a weird last name. Yeah, there's a few of those last namers in the crowd here. Like a news website, they cannot pull this off. You might have seen this a lot with Erdogan, with the little squiggly. I'm the type of guy. This is called squiggly. The font doesn't have it, so you'll see them sticking out like a sword here. So you have to be a bit careful with that. While we got the knife out and we're cutting in our fonts and cutting out characters, let's do some live font hacking. I have prepared earlier a yes. I have a website. Oh, can actually visit it, I think. Yes. I'm using a font that I forget the name of, Kinesis Pro. And this is served by TypeKit. And I thought it would be fun to look at what TypeKit serves, because it's the second biggest font, font services on the internet. So you can be pretty sure that they think a lot about how to get your font to the browser as efficient as possible. So I would think it would. I thought it was a good idea to look at how efficient their fonts are. Well, I've got a few files here. I'll explain them to you later. Oh wait, so I've got them. We're going to look at the internals of a font. Going to trim some fat, make a low resolution version, and I'll explain that as we go along. compress the heck out of it, and then compare it to the original. See if you can do better. Can make it a smaller file. Okay, so I downloaded earlier. I have a Kinesis Go WAV2 file. That is what TypeKit serves if you have visited the site with Go, which supports WAV2. And I am now, you can see here, it's a 44K file. Let's see if it can be better. But the tools that I'm using, they don't work directly with WAV2, which, as I explained earlier, is more a compression format, a zipped version. So we're going to unzip it, and it will become a normal TrueType font. We'll do some stuff on there, and then in the end, we convert it back to a WAV2 to see the actual result. This is a tool that's that will dump. It's called TTX Font Tools. It will dump a font to an XML file, so you can easily inspect it. And if I convert it back now, we will get a TrueType font. Does that make sense? Can you see that? Can you see it online? So you can see that this WAV2 file, when you decompress it into a XML file, that's the extension TTX, it will become 2.3 megabytes. So 44K goes to 2.3 megabytes. And then if you turn it back into a TrueType font, this is what you usually have on your use it as a system font. It's 124 kilobytes. Are you with me so far? Okay. That's encouraging. I'll continue. Let's see what Kinesis Pro looks like inside. This isn't a very thorough introduction to this font format, but I'll quickly step through it. I'm going to write a blog post about this, so if you don't catch all of this, but you find it interesting, check back within 4 days or 11 months, somewhere in between. I'll finish this blog post. What we see here, for instance, is all of the characters that are inside the font. A lot of characters in here, and that's because I chose the full Monty on TypeKit. I want ligatures. You can recognize it here. This is FF ligature. It's an ID and an internal name. It's got a lot of different variants of characters, and in the end, it has about 538 characters that are in the font. Let's see. The biggest part of a font are the letter shapes. So you can look at it like a vector drawing, like an SVG or a vector drawing of a letter. And they all live in the glyph table. And let's see if we can find something here. Capital A. It's a bunch of contours. It's a bunch of points drawn on a raster, and that will be on a grid. That will be translated to something either for print or in our case on screen. A lot of coordinates. This all builds and it got some hinting instructions, mostly used on Windows or mobile devices. Please make sure that the font will look, the letter will look good on small sizes on crappy screens. So yeah, there's a lot of this stuff in there, and not much of it is really relevant for what we're doing now. So let's get to the exciting part. We are going to use a tool called subset. Subset, I know, whatever you want. It's font tools subset, and it's a Python thing, and you can apply. this. It's a command line tool, and it will optimize your fonts in a web-safe, lossless way. That means it will remove legacy stuff that you might not need on modern systems, because we already decided we are going to serve WAF and WAF2, so we can drop some stuff that might be needed for Windows XP or OS2. It's really great so much. It will drop layout features that are cosmetic. That means if you have a brush font, you have like a letter A, you can use it in Illustrator or something. You can choose one big swash or one small swash to start that letter with, or one to connect to the following letter in a certain way. Most likely you don't use that on the web, so it strips out that stuff as well. It strips out like the digital signatures and other metadata that you don't need, especially not in a browser. You might need it in the desktop, but it gets rid of all the fat that we don't need. I'll let it talk a lot, so let's see what's going on. It's originally a subsetting tool. Can you read it in the back? It's a subset. Yeah. Minus for both, minus glyphs, and all of them. And this is basically enough to run all the default safe optimizations, unless you don't specify it all. I forgot to do. Yes, there it is. This is. I asked the tool to tell us what it's doing, and it's dropping a lot of stuff. This is what SVGO would do for SVGs, or image open would do for PNG files or JPEG files, more or less. For instance, these are two Dyna and GDyne. Those are tables that are not in the OpenType specification. Those are things that Typekit has injected in there because it contains information about their build process and copyright information. And what we're doing now is against against the rules if you use a Typekit font. So you can actually put this font online, but you're not supposed to cut arbitrary stuff like this out. It will prune and subset things, removing all kinds of crap. You can read all about that in the blog post. But for now, let's see what it did. And it got about 10 kilobytes. Here is the original PDF. Subset 1. Is about 10 kilobytes shorter. That's kind of nice. I have to go to my speed here. Oh yeah. What we saw in the these fonts contain a lot of hinting instructions. For a system like this, Apple system, they don't look at the hinting instructions at all. It's mostly Windows that still uses this to, especially on lower resolution monitors, to tweak the letter shapes a little bit. But if you decide that you don't want to use it, and Google, for instance, Google fonts, they strip all the hinting. So if you use a Google font, you won't have anything at all. If we want to do that as well, we'll run it through it again. I would say no hinting. It will also strip the hinting. You can see it's even smaller. It's now almost 50K smaller. That's kind of a nice gain, I think. These are the basics. These are the absolute minimum stuff that I would do if I would get a font and the license allows it. I would do this stuff. You can do sort of stuff like this with Font Squirrel online, but Font Squirrel, as well as Typekit, they have the problem they have to manage a lot of fonts. And it's a web service, and you cannot wait too long for your fonts to serve and download it. So when they compress their fonts to WAV or WAV2, they use a compression setting that is more or less a trade-off between how long it takes and how well it compresses. For one font on a machine like this, we don't care about that, and we're going to use a tool called WAV2 compress. I think it uses the broadly compression algorithm. On the maximum compression level, goes to 11. That is serious, by the way. Best compression level is 11. That's right, 29K instead of the original 44K. That's I haven't run the numbers, but that's quite a significant change. It's 1/3 of the fat has just been cut, and the only observable thing that you have sacrificed are the hinting. You use this font on a Windows machine. But we can take this even further, because, like I showed you, these coordinates, they are drawn on a grid that a type designer chooses. When the type designer starts with a new font, the font design software asks, what kind of grid do you want to draw this on? Much detail, less detail. And that unit is called units per n. And this font has a units per n value of 1,000. So it has a virtual grid of 1,000 by 1,000 letters are drawn on that. And the thing is, I have to jump back. That can mean that we'll store the difference between this point and the next point, like an SVG would. The thing is, if you have big numbers, if this means moving 500 points on your grid, that means it needs to have 2 bytes. Uses 2 bytes to store that in the binary format. And everything below 255, 256 can be stored in 1 byte. So if you can get all those differences to be not further apart than 255, they will all fit in 1 byte instead of maybe half of them in 2 bytes. That will save us. And I've also prepared a little script. I'm using a tool called FontForge in a Python script, and this will really crudely open our font. Change the n value to 100 instead of 1,000 that we saw it was, and squash it all down and save it as a low-res variant. So let's see what that does. It's not advised to do this with fonts that will become huge. If you want to use this font and you do print design, you want to make a billboard on a building, you don't want to do this. But if you keep your font at 24 pixels in your website, you most likely won't see the difference. And font designers will sue you for that statement, but take that with a grain of salt. But let's see which one you want to use the subset one. Let's make it as small as possible. Set. Right, that's about right. Low res. It took this font, oh, and it didn't do a very impressive job. Took this font and it's 1 kilobyte. Okay, so I think we can safely say that wasn't very successful, and I think this very small gain that we had will have disastrous effects on the actual design of the letter, because I don't know if you can see it, but because the grid has gotten coarser, you can see here this is the original. This is 1,000 units per annum. That one is 100 units per annum. This is a smooth curve right here. Here it's gotten a little bit more square. Here's something that's happening as well. And I don't know if you could tweak this a little bit. I haven't dived into this as much as I would like to, but this is pretty much the result of what you do when you get a low resolution font. But the appearance of body text size, it's not really that small, I would think. So if you are going to do extreme optimizing, this might be an option for you, but I wouldn't recommend it. I've done a test with another font. This is Droid Sans. That one has a units per annum value of 2048. This is 512, 28, 46, 32, 16. You can see here you don't see a lot of difference. Here, maybe if you look very closely, but here you can start to notice differences. And here the letter starts to fall apart and eventually do something that's completely tainted. These had a little bit better results. These are some results for the upcoming blog post. You can see maybe if you use that 46 version, that would be adequate for your site, and you would save that. That might be useful for one of those other many techniques that you have, the flash of faux text. This is a technique by Zach Letterman, where he takes the font that you want to use, takes only A to Z, uppercase and lowercase, and nothing else. And if you compress that right, you can squeeze that down to about 8 or 9 kilobytes, depending on how much detail is in your font. And you can stick that in your critical font, in the first 40 kilobytes that you serve to the user. And that means that most of your text will be drawn in a font that it will eventually be drawn, because the proper font will be loaded after all of this has been rendered. And maybe compressing a font down like this, maybe you can get away with that one or that one. And when you have a font that's 8K and you can squeeze it down to 6K, maybe that's worth it for you. So should we do all of that? As a nerd, I think yes, because it's fun to hack around in these things. And it pains my heart if we transfer useless dead weight over cyberspace. What's the point in that? So I say trim all the fat that you can. But as Braunstein already said, latency is the real performance killer. And I'm skipping a lot of his smart science behind this, and I'll just go right to this chart where he explains like font behavior. It takes longer to wait on all kinds of network stuff and on the server at the other end than it takes for the actual transfer. Once the transfer has been initiated and bytes are coming to your computer, then it's usually okay, and it doesn't really matter that much if you transfer 30K or you transfer 22K. Those 8 kilobytes will probably not be very noticeable, but a drop in internet connectivity will do much more harm. So the wacky optimizer stuff that I just showed you, it's fun, but I think it shouldn't be part of the web font etiquette, because if you keep these three things in mind, then you can just work with the regular WAF or WAF2 files that the font supplier gives to you. And if you have a font loading strategy, then I will make a website that's nice to visit and will not upset your users. Yeah, that was it. Thanks for listening to me. All right. Are there any questions?
With the move that you optimized, there was a switch between the number behind was the change in the grid, right? The
Yes.
Why did it go up and down?
Oh, that's a good question. The question was in this chart. Yeah. The question is, why does the font size go up and down? Well, theoretically, the resolution has been halved here, this font. The 512 and 256. I don't know, actually, really. One theory I have is that I should take a Saturday afternoon to figure out, but I have to get so it won't be soon. The theory I have is that maybe like in this range, it doesn't really matter, and all the points, like maybe 20% of the points that were previously 2 bytes are now 1 byte, and it doesn't really matter. And why it goes up? Maybe it's a rounding error of.
Can you imagine if you show the PDF instead of WAF, that it's more linear, like compression depends on the amount of repetition, so there's going to be less repetition.
It's very well possible. Yeah, the remark was that maybe the TrueType files themselves, this up and down stuff isn't happening. Oh wait, and we can just check it really quickly, because now I'm curious as well. Droid sounds, that was one. Let's see. So you could see at the top, you can see the TTF files, and a while down I converted them all to WAF, not WAF2, by the way. And oh wait, I'm garbage. Yeah, the 512 BPM version is 35K, and then the 256 one is 38K, so it gained weight. So yeah, some other fonts where I've done this, I think.
So you explained that the scale is a different number.
Yeah.
Put the points into smaller grids and
it's very well possible. It's yeah, you have this rough line that goes down, but there are ups and downs in there, and random stuff. That could be very well an option. But you bet that going. I'll hope to have this figured out when we upload those lines.
I have a question about the well preload. If you only use your CSS short statements with your CSS, then the browser will determine for you which of the two should download.
Yeah.
Wolf or Wolf2. If I use preload and no browser, you must download this because I'm going to use it. And if I can use both Wolf and Wolf2, how does it?
Oh, that's yeah. The question is if you put the well, it's but the question is if you put the rel preload link in your HTML, so you instruct the browser to already start downloading a font that you know you're going to need later, but the CSS doesn't yet. How you handle WAF and WAF2? Because if you tell it to, I don't know what you're going to use, so fetch me the WAF2, the WAF, and maybe the OTF version as well. Then you're going to end up with 3 downloads, and that will be a shitty experience because you need one font. And the answer to that, I don't know. I haven't done a lot with that side of optimizing, to be honest. I figure you could maybe have JavaScript help you out with that, but I would have to.
I asked well, because we have the change of the action script.
Yeah.
You could always inline that and then write they did reload in line, but I feel it was kind of messy. We could do media queries to reload link difficulty support queries in it. I don't know.
Yeah, there's a lot of uncertainties to summarize that. How that would work, and some consider this also an anti-pattern because you are already forcing a download that should really be decided by the browser. If this is worth looking into if you want to squeeze a last bit of performance out of your web project, but don't just dump it with 5 links and preload them all there and think you have to fix it. That's really
I checked it. The preload is only supported on browsers that support WAF2.
That's perfect. Well, the preloading is only supported when the browser supports WAF2, so you only have to download for now. Yeah, so if that comes to browsers that ported to browsers that also don't support WAF2, do support WAF. Still one. Okay, that's good to know. Anything else?
Give it up for a whole lot of time.
Oh, and all the way at the bottom here, 2 essential sources of information, Zekland and Ramstein, they know if I know 16 units per annum of font knowledge, they can full power. Do check out their work. They're very smart and they know this stuff even better. So,
Will you get the slides online?
yeah, good question. I'll probably put my slides online as I have already one request for that. I'll probably work on it. Okay, thanks everyone.
Dankjewel. I heard that Coalition Money was very popular at meetups. I always get them, so I'm going to just have a new flavor out this week, I think. So, and there's a voucher gift card.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. I can see the Björk is already ready, but we have a break. So
I can set up
so
the way, right?
you can actually refresh, and it's a commercial break. So I have to say that we're also hiring here. Both we're looking for new colleagues, and if you're a freelancer, we're also looking for freelancers in case we can't staff our own projects. We have links on our site. It's a whole promo for today. So beers are in the fridge. There's more food there if you want, and we'll come back in 15 minutes for beers. Crazy, or even in the studio.
Draai je nou overheen naar player?
Ja, ga even kijken wat gebeurt er. Hier is hij weg.
Oh, moet ik van dit klant al. Jammer.
Hier heb je de Airplay op mijn laptop. Nee, je moet naar mijn laptop Airplay.
Hoe?
Oh yes, that's our mess.
Airplay naar mijn laptop. Rechtsboven heb je naast het geluid.
Ja, moet ik weer afsturen?
Ja, weet je dan niet welke scherm?
Nee, het gaat niet goed. Ik heb alleen maar een bureau.
Ja, maar als die niet zo een beetje
Why exactly?
Kan ik instellen dat ik het weet?
Oh,
wauw.
Ja.
Wauw.
Dit werkt.
Ja, en ook met die oortjes. Ja, ik denk dat ik uiteindelijk wel het ik denk dat ik op maandag het vergis ga.
What's a
So when ik
I want to do it. It's like
well, yeah, this is what we need
let's say the price of salt. Yeah. Oh, but still, there's a lot of language. That's why I want this. I found this on the for the books. So okay, buy one. I go there to see if I can find one. Because it's for me to buy one as well. And this beer is they do the beer process. And then they go through press, and they do the champagne process. And they, I don't know if you understand that. They usually There's an You want this? Yes, yes. What is the design?
Yeah, sometimes,
For our own side, we have
when you say that, you can make so much. There, dive into the actual drawing, there are a lot of math coming in, a lot of layers of the rendering of that structure so whenever you don't know yeah.
I would like to learn more.
Ja, schade wat goed zit bij zit. Ja, maar hij moet wel altijd zitten.
You still need a beer before you sit down. So our second and last speaker for tonight is Jurgen. Jurgen is one of the front-end developers at the forum. He's also one of our tech leads. And I think that me and all of Jurgen's other colleagues here kind of know about Jurgen that, well, whenever he's never really satisfied with the answer, it sort of works like this. He always needs to get to the bottom of everything once he sets his mind to something. And I think one of the more recent things that got into Jurgen's head are SVGs. And well, that was the moment that he made sure that he knew all the ins and outs about SVGs. Personally, I think that Jurgen writes all his SVG code by hand in his IDE. But tonight he's also going to tell more about how you offer and maintain SVGs in a different way. So give it up for Jurgen.
Well, I don't really offer it by hand, but I always open them with my IDE when I get them. And yeah, when I see something that doesn't really feel right, I dive into it. And what did really feel right was this image, for instance. Yeah, we work a lot with visual designers, and I once got this asset, and it looked very simple, but it was still 2 KB. I thought, well, that's not right. It should be like 100 bytes or something. Why is this so big? And other times you get a drawing like this, and you open it in Illustrator, and all of a sudden everything is gone, and it looks horrible. And then when you put it on a website and it looks like this, then you're the one to blame. So I want to preemptively figure this out and dove into it. So yeah, where do SVGs come from? Often you get a file, vd asset icon.svg from a visual designer, and I started asking them, well, what application do you use to draw your SVGs? I sent this out as a Google form to a lot of visual designers we work with at United. Most of them said Illustrator. One person said Sketch. And what do you use to export your SVG assets? One person also said Sketch, and the rest of them said Illustrator. And then what do you get? Well, obviously I opened the Sketch one because that's the worst offender. Yeah, you see a lot of stuff, and to be honest, I don't know what a lot of stuff actually does in there. I know that it doesn't do anything per se, but it's still there. So why is there an XML version on there which is not needed? Why is there a generated sketch 42? Why is there a description created with Sketch? No one really wants to know what you use to alter your assets, I think. And then all of a sudden, with a mask in it for something else, no one knows why. I asked, yeah, what do you use to actually test your SVG assets in? And most of them said, well, I use the Finder. Just do a quick look, and if it looks fine there, it's fine by me. Or yeah, maybe I open it in Safari. Okay, another question. What application do you use to optimize your SVGs then? Well, most of them optimize. Why should they optimize? It's an image. I don't know. And for some reason, some of them also knew SVG OMG, which I think is quite a cool thing that they know about SVG OMG. Although a lot of things that you can do with your SVGs to make sure that they're not that big or are maybe more flexible to use are not things that you can figure out with SVG or make sure that are maintained with SVG. So where do these SVG go? When we use SVG, we might use it as an image or as an object, or also quite often directly in the HTML or inside an SVG with a background image with the data URI. Some people will say, well, why have these different strategies? Well, different strategies for different things. Especially directly in the HTML, you can have a lot of things you can do with it because it's in the same scope as the CSS derived for your HTML. So how did I get there? And then we get into the fun part. Illustrator has a lot of these SVG options, but these are the things we cannot control. These are the things that a visual designer has to choose. And for instance, for styling, there are 4 options. For fonts, there are multiple options. Decimal places are something that maybe now makes sense after Wolf's talk regarding the points within an EM, because it's about the precision of your artwork. But these things are not things that you can really give to a designer to make a good choice about. I found out there's another option in Illustrator. I did not even know this. There's an asset export, and it has less options, unless you know where to look for. And I believe this there are other options that kind of mimic the options of this one, but with slightly different wording of the options. And we have Sketch, and they have this beautiful export panel and say, well, I want a SVG or a PNG, and then it will just create the artwork for you in a folder and you can send over to me. So why did it break or bloat? I wanted to find out. So I dove into a lot of these SVGs I got, saw big files, a lot of points, a lot of the mask I talked about, or some artwork that looked like something that would be a stroke actually became a fill. So I wanted to find out why. So what I did was just draw a lot of squares. You can probably see that it's not that hard to do. You would imagine that these are fairly small SVGs, just a rectangle with a cross in it. But I played with the stroke line in the corner and the cap. And I did the same for Sketch. So created a rectangle with an X in it, played the stroke line, then expanded that path again to make sure that it could draw in different ways, so kind of mimic the way a visual designer might draw their artwork. Again, played with the border position, and then created a view that would just show all of the export options and inline them in one page. And already you can see all these numbers below it show the sizes in bytes. It's a typo. It should be a and you can already see that there are a lot of differences between these files. For instance, this one, for file 212. These are optimized via SVG, so you can actually choose if they use SVG O or the original. So white space has been stripped, IDs have been stripped, so the normal options. So this one is 212, but you can see that this one is 419. And what you can see that this one, for instance, has all these style tags in it, so it actually inlines the SVG. I'm sorry, the CSS. And that is a problem because all of a sudden we see this one doesn't really look like shit because this one has a declaration of one of these others in there, so it actually applies the CSS of somewhere here down here to make sure it looks the way it should because of some approximation of that of the border thickness of the stroke width, and because it's all the same document, because I used the inlining strategy, it actually applies it on all these others, so that's why it really looks weird. But you can already see that there are big differences also in the way it looks between exporting and saving as. So that's already gave me an hint. Okay, so I should very specifically say that if you want to give me an SVG from Illustrator, use the export option with presentation attributes, because that one is the smallest, and never use the save as, because then it looks different and it's a lot bigger. There's another quiz for you. This one and this one are in file size 10% apart from each other. Can someone spot the difference? Yeah. So yeah, I drew one on 512 pixel grid and then shifted it 1.10th of a pixel. And all of a sudden, you need a bigger precision to make sure that it actually aligns. Of course, you can still get that fixed by SVG, but if you have a slightly more complex shape that your precision will mangle, then your artwork doesn't work. It doesn't look the same again. You can get to an iFind with a visual designer. So yeah, what can we do about it? Be careful with stroke lines. So what actually happens with the stroke line? Well, you can, for instance, if you have the stroke line options in Illustrator and in Sketch are a lot broader than you can do with SVG. So you have all these options of aligning a stroke to the outside of your artwork, on the inside of the artwork, or in the center. SVG does not have this option. If you would draw a stroke, it's on the middle of your artwork. No discussion about it. There are two ways to make sure that you actually maintain the appearance, and that's either creating an outline, so making sure that instead of a stroke, you get a path that has an outer and an inner, and then you fill it out, and you get artwork that actually has a fill instead of a stroke. But it is on the same position as that you had drawn it in Illustrator or in Sketch. Another one is masking, so you can draw it a bit bigger, get a thicker, or it's actually the same artwork. You increase the stroke width to 2 pixels instead of 1 pixel, for instance, and then add a mask to it, and then voila, you have the same appearance. Problem is that that's the thing that you saw earlier on that big sheet. All of a sudden, you saw artwork that had a 2 times as big stroke width because it was inheriting not stroke width from another artwork. This used to be the way Sketch works. They changed it in Sketch 43, I believe, and now it goes to the outlining procedure. But that's something that you really have to keep track of, or ask your visual designer to keep track of, because there is no way to fix this in a way that is maintainable if you want to play with these things. Another thing that's important to easy draw on a grid. A lot of people say, well, SVG is to be is resolution independent. Why should I keep track of my pixel grid? Well, pretty easy. You have a grid. You draw a pixel, your artwork on it. all these points are really easily represented by integers. And if you do it like this, then all of a sudden your artwork becomes bigger because you need a higher precision. But it's the same artwork. So always make sure that people find this option, because then you can really see what happens. You can also see that if you would use it on a website, what your browser will do with an artwork. If you have drawn something that should be used in 24 by 24 pixels, but you were drawing it on a pixel grid in 25 by 25, then yeah, it doesn't really fit, because all of a sudden it has to dither around the pixel. So make sure that if you draw your artwork, draw it on a pixel grid, and the pixel grid should be the intended usage. Another one, something that I often see: simplify your paths. Of course, you're working with, if you're an illustrator drawing a lot and you need a lot of points to make sure you can snap on it, I don't know. But before you know it, you end up with a lot of points. And that's actually the thing that happened with the first image I showed you. There were a lot of points on that line, because what happened was it was based on all these different circles to make sure that you get the image of a profile picture. And it was squished and it was moved around. But a lot of these points were not doing anything. But they take up space in your image. So again, yeah, remove those anchor points, and it helps a lot. Another one, inspect your exports. I always try to quick look where I open it in Sublime Text, and I try to figure out does this make sense or not. And this is something that, of course, you can't ask a visual designer, but it's something that we could help them with, I guess. Take a look at the export and see, did they use the proper exporting settings? Can I help them with their exporting settings? Because that's a big game and a big problem. So, what's the game? But when we do all these things, we can get easier palette swaps, for instance. If we take the sheet again, you can see that if I would suggest to swap all the stroke colors with yellow, for instance, I get this, and now we can also see what then happens. All the things that are left have some problem. What kind of problems can we have? Well, for instance, these are inline styles, and because they have inline styles, they are they have a higher hierarchy, they have a higher score in the CSS, so that's why they're not changed by my my style rule. Some of these things are actually not strokes, but they're fills, and that's why these are bigger. And yeah, and some of them, the other ones are just style elements that keep their appearance but stack with another. Another thing is we have easier styling in general. What we can also do, for instance, is add animations to it, and we couldn't do that otherwise because we didn't have the artwork to actually do something with it. So where do we go from here? One of the questions I asked, or the statements I gave to the visual designers was, I consider developers' duty to test my SVG assets. Who here agrees with that? Do we consider it developers' duty to specify what an acceptable SVG is. Because I found that that is actually the most important part, because we can test all we want, but if we don't know how to explain to them what we can do or what we expect from them, then we have a big problem with making sure that we actually get what we want. And testing all the assets, then we need a testing suite for that. We need to make sure that we have some way of making sure that these things do the thing we want them to do. So I think it's easier to make sure that we have a way of helping them out. And create a small list based on that overview. I think the most important part is add presentation attributes. Even though it might increase your the file size because you're specifying the way the SVG should look inside the SVG on the artwork itself, or you have to add groups for to define that. You actually know that it is applied to that, and it's easily overridable. Another one is center your stroke lines. Don't play with alignment on either side because it breaks your artwork. And as soon as you would open it again in Illustrator, your artwork will behave differently than when you draw it. So it's a destructive thing to export it as SVG and then open it again if you would play around with those stroke lines. Another one, make sure that you have a view box set up and a width and a height. The reason why these sizes were different in that sheet were because of these attributes missing. Make sure to be as pixel precise as possible. If you're not pixel precise, then you increase your the data needed for the same artwork. And make sure your paths are simplified. And another one, very important, because a lot of things break on this. Don't use any masks in it. For some reason, I don't even know why. I still don't know why. I end up with masks in artwork that really don't need masks, and all of a sudden you open it in Internet Explorer or something, and it breaks. And it doesn't break always. It breaks in some masks. And to be fair, I'm not sure why. These are some ways to make sure that we can help visual designers create artwork that we can work with without losing our sanity. But maybe the solution is to give visual designers a tool to test SVG with. If we don't know what they're, if we get them get the assets, then have to check if they work. Then explain that they've done it in a way that we didn't really expect. It takes a lot of time, so maybe we need an SVG linter. And I think that's the way I should move that overview forward. Making sure that I actually give visual designers a tool to also optimize them, because they want to optimize their things. They know how to find SVG OVGs, some of them. But maybe we should make sure that we also have a tool to actually audit these SVGs. And I'll switch to that the list I made. Because yeah, there you can see what actually. My mouse doesn't seem to work again anymore. I'll go farther than this. So yeah, what you can see is that I identified some tags that I found out might be problematic. So we should check for definitions, style tags, style attributes, and then we can maybe even write like linters, which tags can you use, which tags can't you use, and then even bundle them into settings to make sure that we can see if people have used certain settings, and then help them out in that way, and eventually also get smaller SVGs in return. So I'm now asking you, is this something that might help you in your workflow? Is this something that,
I think so, but I think it's a very bad idea to try and science.
yeah, but that's why there are presentation attributes. I mean, I think that also this, if you use a styles tag to define your styling, again, when you open it in Illustrator, you're not certain that it will be there when you open it. So presentation attributes in that sense are a lot more safe if you re-author, or yeah, if you want to go further on your design as a visual designer.
I'm just curious about your workflow. Would it be better to maybe ask the designers to create illustrated files and then
Yes, and to be completely honest with you, often I redraw artwork I get from designers, but I don't think that's actually the way it should be, because my time is valuable, their time is valuable, and we're doing the same thing twice. I don't know that, and also officially I don't have Illustrator on my laptop.
yeah, I don't know. Does it would designers actually give you the illustrated files, or will they only give you the SVGs?
Often they will give the SVGs, and I'll want to. I'll try to find them if I can't work with the SVGs. Sometimes they give the Illustrator files, but often we say, well, I need the SVGs, not the Illustrator files.
Yeah, I mean that's what I do too. I say, yeah, please SVGs, please.
Yeah.
But I think the linter that you suggest sounds like a good tool actually, because then you can point. Hey, can you just make sure it passes this test?
Yeah.
And then send it.
Yeah. The only problem that I'm missing is to make sure that they get actionable data from the linter. Because if I would say you can't have definitions in your SVG, they would not know what to do. But to be fair, I also ask them, do you know what to do when I look for you to ask you to change something? More often than not, they don't know what to change. So there is some problem with that anyway. I only have to make sure that I find the right settings to test for, and then give helpful hints. So I find definitions. Maybe you turned on internal CSS on your export.
So what is the goal of this part? Is it some parts seem like you were talking about file size.
Yeah.
Other parts you're talking about usability or
yeah. Well, yeah. The problem is that you start with you get a file, and it started with a big file, and I thought, well, why is this file so big? Because there are a lot of stuff in it that you don't need. Why is there a lot of stuff in there that you don't need? Because of settings. What happened with the settings? And all of a sudden, the Pandora's box opened in that sense, and found out that there are all these settings that we don't want. You get incompatibility from exporting functions. So, yeah, and a lot of these things start with the first line you draw. So if your setting of your on your stroke of your rectangle is different than an SVG can work with, then already you have a bigger file. You already have problems with if you would combine it on multiple versions of it on the same page.
Yeah, but I would make the argument that you should optimize for SVGs that are clear and don't have any. For example, the stroke is a pretty good one because it really messes up the SVG. But on the technical part about definitions or styles, I had a case where using styles reduced my SVG by 90%.
Yeah.
So on the technical side, it's pretty. There are some other issues that I would say are not the issue.
Yeah, but if that's completely true. But I think that as soon as you would use styles, it's something that you as a developer should do, and not a designer. Because
there's a workflow there.
Yeah.
That's also a very deliberate to do is saving both as a SVG and as a PV. And then that's the reason probably that it was asked for an SVG, but then I PV is smaller file size. So then if you compare those two, PV and the SVG, and the SVG isn't smaller, then that should probably give you that there's something off. If not, then either using styles, and maybe it's okay depending on its usage.
Yeah, but that's why I also exported all the images as PNG, and you can see well the PNG of that rectangle or of that square with the cross in it, 260 bytes on disk. So if it's bigger than that, there's something wrong with it. In my humble opinion. Questions? I will at the end of my slides, yeah. Yeah, okay, go on.
Well, actually, I like the idea of a litter because to me it sounds very similar to what developers have the issue with accessibility. It's not very visible issue normally, and I think that tools like the accessibility litter.aim get very actionable things back, and I think that's probably what you need here. If I can drag and drop by SVG somewhere, and you tell me one thing you're using this, you're not sure wrong, and you're doing it, but that gets its excellence. Are you using Visual Illustrator? This is what I do. No, fix this. I think I'm kind of excited about the idea that when will the idea
well, I heard a very good response to that within 4 days or 11 months.
So maybe you just have to make an illustrator plugin. Make sure they cannot choose an author.
Yeah, well, I also asked them what type of tool would you be willing to use to optimize or whatever, prepare your assets, and most of them wanted to have a web app followed by a desktop app, and almost no one wanted a command line app. I don't know why, but it struck me as yeah, peculiar, but also promising that they actually prefer the web app, because that's something I can make. Well, I would think a desktop app and plugin is almost the same. But also the problem is that not everyone uses Illustrator, and they, for some reason, also use different settings within Illustrator. So then to make sure that they have a fourth option for Illustrator might be muddying the waters even more.
That's the thing, because Illustrator nor Sketch is made for icons, for drawing icons. There are different tools for that that can export SVG. And the thing is that these are the two main applications designers use. So my question is, well, I really like the idea of a linter, but isn't the problem better solved with better tools for designers?
Yes, I think most definitely solve with better tools. Or actually maybe worse tools, meaning tools that are not trying to do things that are not usable in SVGs. I think that if you have a tool that has SVG as a native file format, then it would be safer to actually work with. But also, yeah, it could also be that you're a bit hamstrung with SVGs, and that we need more, or designers need more options to work with SVGs. And of course, I can imagine that if you would draw artwork like this, that you want to have your scope in the inside. I mean, it kind of makes sense that you want to have it aligned to the outer border of your outline if you want to of your artwork, and if you want to scale it or something, that you would want to do it from one point, let's say it's the same inward, for instance. You would not be able to do that with the SVG spec unless you would use the art board for that. But then you have different scope widths inside your artwork, adding complexity to your artwork. So maybe simple.
That's the hard thing. Yeah. You need to create something, get a nice image, and then it needs to be coded.
Yes, and that's I think the biggest part. They don't realize that it's code. It's almost like you're working with someone else who uses an old version of Dreamweaver in Design View, saves it and sends it to you. That's the basically are. What I didn't even talk about is to do with animations and transforms, because then you get into the whole system of where you of origins, because see all the origins are in the standard top left. That's the standard origin of an SVG. But if you want to have translations on it, for instance, if you have a hamburger or something that you want to transform into an X, if you want to use simple CSS transforms, you're banging your head against the wall because you actually want your origin here in the middle. And yeah, try getting that from an Illustrator export. It's almost undoable. So I think we need some tools to help them with, or write a Python script to do that. I mean, write all the
I mean, if I were to do it, I would say it's so simple. I would say point one is to check it visually.
Yeah.
So you will check in multiple browsers with different backgrounds to show that it's okay. Number two is show all the stuff that's outside of the viewport. So,
oh yeah.
I mean, it's pretty easy to detect whether or not there's stuff going on outside the viewport. And you can say something about it. Free text. If you convert your text to outlines, 95% of the cases, well, maybe in some cases you want to, but in most cases, you need the SVG and the web frames. For definitions in Illustrator, usually get exported as groups. So groups in Illustrator transport to definitions. So definitions is usually a representation in Illustrator. And group everything or explode.
Yeah, definitions are mostly used for styling and symbols, I believe. It's if you would create a symbol in Illustrator, then it will be a symbol in RSVG as well within the definition. So it will export definitions, but yeah, groups will be groups and layers will be groups in your SVG. But again, groups are easy to handle. I mean, SVGO will strip out the groups and make it flat. But if you would use a mask for it, then you would simple than something different.
Complementary thing that you can start with.
Yeah.
I think how that started out with code is that you have to go to your terminal, and then after you're done, you can run it. Then you go back to your code on that line, okay, and then you got file watchers, and then terminal somewhere halfway, and you can error expression type. And then after that, you get it integrated into our IDEs, and then you get it as a line that something's wrong, and it's wrong, and that's it. You have that you start out with a linker and maybe some everything on the side. I don't know if from the save to the integrator and sketch can happen and you can do it side by side. And then plug it would be ideal as it
Yeah, but most visual designers will only export them SVG once. So file watchers might not be.
Yeah, I think it's I don't know if you can only do it on the export, but basically on the original, that's the whole part.
We have an artwork watcher.
Yeah.
And then it has to be a plugin.
Any other questions? Then, Gerha, I would like to thank you. And also for you, there's chocolate, something. So that's it for the speakers for tonight. You can stay and bring things, and if you leave and you think you want to eat lasagna another day this week, bring some lasagna, sorry, otherwise we can't get rid of it. We're planning to do another front-end forward meetup after the summer, so that's going to be September. It's probably going to be about progressive web apps in real life, so not these are progressive web apps, but actual progressive web apps build, things that went wrong, those kind of things. We have one speaker for that. We're still looking for a speaker, so if you're interested in that, and know someone, also let us know. I would like to thank you for coming and attending, and I hope to see you next time. So, thank you. All right.